Okay, now we are about to actually do the pattern for our vest or our vest-like garment that we are now going to work on. This particular vest is a very basic vest. I'm sure all of you are going to have wonderful ideas that are not basic like that. But this is what we're working with because I'm going to show you how to make the pattern for it. Now, we started out, as you know, with our sloper. After we do the sloper, we then have to make a draft with our paper. Again, the same, another sheet, I should say, of your pattern making paper. And in order to start it off, we can put the sloper over here because we have the sloper. But, I should tell you that you, of course, are going to have to what? Trace the sloper onto this piece of paper. After you've traced the sloper, then we're going to start to make what we call a draft. We make the draft by, first of all, looking at our design and seeing how we're going to be able to create that design on with our sloper that will fit, of course, actually it's our dress form that it will fit. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to figure out how it's going to close, because my center front line here is very important. However, if we're going to have buttons, we're going to have to put an extension for our buttons. So let's say we want, even though this is the center front, we still have to have an extension in order for them to lap over each other when you're making a button. When you're making buttons, I should say, buttons. All right, my button, as far as the size of a button is concerned, is usually anywhere from 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. You can, of course, do them smaller or larger than that. I wouldn't go more than an inch. Now, we're going to once we find out the diameter of our button, then we're going to put that measurement as an extension on our center front line. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch button. In other words, my button is going to be the denominator, or the dimension of my button is going to be 1/2 inch. So, all right. So let's do that first. I'm just adding that on so that I have it. Okay. Now next I'm looking at my sketch and I'm going to make some decisions. Like, for example, this particular vest, of course it doesn't look like our sloper because our sloper is a jewel neck. So we want to make it, this looks like it's going down maybe just above my the apex here. Now, a lot of times you will have a dress form or something that you can use to determine where you want it to close, because that's the important thing. How far down do you want your opening to be in this particular case? So I'm saying it's going to close right about around where my apex is. My apex is marked here because I marked that here from my sloper. It's just a little bit above it though, so we're going to put it, let's say it's going to close right here. So we're about to make that neckline. The next question is, how do I want that neckline to hit me? It's a vest, but I don't want it to hit me as close as a blouse would. So I want to give some extra room here. I'm going to add, or take away actually, a 1/2 inch from my neckline on the shoulder here. And once I do that, then I'm going to make my V-neck. Oddly enough, the V-neck, when you make a V-neck, it's not really straight, because if you did a straight V-neck, it would kind of buckle out on you slightly. So again, with because our body is a little cylindrical, it's not really straight up and down, we're going to use the French curve here, this particular French curve, which gives me not much of a curve, but just a little bit. So that's my first line. That's my V, and this is my buttonhole extension. This is my neckline, and again, I've taken it 1/2 inch from the original neckline. So we're changing up our sloper so that we can accommodate it in our design. Okay. Next thing I'm going to think about is how I want to shape it. Now we know that the sloper is fitted to the dress form, but I don't want my vest to be totally fitted. I want my vest to be extended out a little bit. In other words, I want it to be easy to wear. So I'm gonna probably add about maybe 1/2 inch to my original drape. If I add 1/2 inch here, that means I'm adding 2 inches to the whole thing all around. All right, so, but on the waistline here, because remember, this vest, if you look at it, it's slightly below the waist, right? Where it ends. It doesn't end, right here would be the waistline. Okay, so let's say it's gonna be, on the side seam, it's gonna be 2 inches below the waistline. We know that we have the waistline marked. So we just wanna keep it in mind that that's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna put that line there for now. And I'm gonna go back over here and work with the inside of my garment, because what I'm gonna end up with is a panel here and a panel here, because we're gonna do the princess line. And you have learned through the other videos how to do the princess line. So we take the apex here, and what we're gonna do is just go down this line, which is one part of the shoulder line dart, and we're gonna just take it and connect it to the other side, or one side I should say, of the waist dart. So this way we're gonna have one seam. We're gonna be able to divide these, because before we wouldn't be able to divide them because we had 2 darts there, but they were not, this was all connected. All right, so we have our line now that we want for the princess line. And again, this princess line is from the shoulder. I'm going to do something to help me here. I'm gonna actually put that 1/2 inch mark there, or the halfway mark between the legs of the dart here, of this dart. I'm not gonna do it there, because eventually you'll see that we're not gonna use this at all in our panels. See, I can just mark that out now so that you'll be able to see that later. Okay, so I can go now. Let me go and see what I want to do for my armhole. I don't really want my armhole to be, you know how when you did your sloper or your original drape, your armhole came right to the edge of your armhole where your shoulder is. I want, on my vest, I want it to come in a little bit more. I think about maybe 1 inch. Let's measure it. I'm gonna go 1 inch in here. And I want it also to be much lower, about maybe 1 inch lower than the actual sloper, the measurement for the actual sloper, which comes close under the arm. I don't want it close under the arm. I want it to be lower, just in case I want to wear a shirt under it or what have you. Now, I'm probably gonna have to take my pencil and kind of decide how I want this seam to go. Or I should say, the armhole itself. I'm doing it this way, but then I'm gonna take I'm gonna try to get it as close to the line that I did as I can. Oh, I see he wants to go this way, so I'm going to do that. Okay, and remember, I did say I wanted to go out a 1/2 inch here, right here at the, actually right here where the armhole and the side seam meets. And I said I want to go 2 inches beneath the waist. And we know that once we get to the waist, the natural shape of the waistline is going to be to go back out slightly. Okay, so one way you can do that is to just, you could measure down halfway. You could take your original skirt drape, put it up here, the waist of the skirt, and see how far out you want to go, because that will determine, of course, where the actual hip line would be. So it's kind of a situation now where you're designing, you're doing what you want, so therefore you're going to use your own judgment to get the shape that you want to get. So I know I'm going to go out here at the waistline about maybe, again, that same 1/2 inch, or a little bit more maybe. Let's leave it at there. Now some of you may want to go straight down because you won't want it fitted at all. That's fine. Or some of you might want to go out for your fitting, for your garment. Whatever, now is the time for you to design your garment. So now, we must always know where our waistline is there. I always mark your waistline so you know where that is. So we know, we have the waistline here, we went down 2 inches, and we're going to, good way to do it is just to, it's very slightly that we go out, but, and then whenever we do this, when we're making patterns, we never leave these seams or the lines where they just go straight into each other and out, sort of making a V. No, what we will do is round them off slightly, just like that. So this is where we are so far. Just want you to get a chance to see exactly what we've done so far. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to design the bottom of the vest, this part. So, we already know that this is the princess line. So this princess line is right here. However, I don't want it to fit as closely as my original Soaker fit. So I'm gonna I'll do maybe about halfway each one of these, the dart on each side of the dart. Remember, this is one leg, this is one leg. If I come in here, if I come on one leg here, I'm gonna have to come on the other leg the same way. Okay, so we know we wanna do that. Now, in looking at our design, we want, this probably goes up. Let's say we're gonna do it so that if this is gonna be 2. Again, like I said, you at this point, you're designing what you want. So let's say I want it to come down. I'm making the V now, right here. And I want it to start slightly below the waist here. So here I go with my V. I'm gonna have to make some changes on that before I finish, but that's basically the shape I'm gonna want, and I'm gonna want it to come in from here. Because this is, of course, the side seam. And the side seam is gonna be lower, or I should say higher than the V here, right? But it's gonna be lower than the original waistline. So that's pretty much what I have, again, looking at what I want. Now, one other thing that I always do is the center of that dart. I like to make sure that I have that as low down as I'm gonna go for my actual garment. Another thing that I should tell you is when you're getting the piece of paper that you wanna use for your to make your original, in order to make your original pattern, let's say, your draft, you're going to have to make sure that it's long enough for what you want. Suppose you were going to make a whole dress. So this piece right here would be long. In other words, you're going to measure the length of the dress, and then you're going to actually have it the length that you want to make it. So this is the length that I'm going to have for my vest. So the next thing I'm going to do then is to actually put my shape in. But before I do that, let me work with my darts here. What I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I don't want it to, as I said before, I don't want it to come in this much. So I'm going to bring this dart in some. I'm going to bring this dart the same amount in. So that this part here, right in the center there, is not going to be used, but I changed from the original dart line to here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to bring my dart right on down to the V that I made. Again, everybody's is different, depending upon your design. But this is my design. This is what I want it to look like. Now, let's see. Maybe if I used this, I can show you where your seam, how about going off? Remember, we didn't go all the way in. That's one. And then this is your other seam. They're all in one here. But then, you see how it divides? Comes here. Okay. So this is going to be one panel. This is going to be another panel. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to, actually we can actually divide this at a certain point right now. Let's try to, I think what I'm going to do is shape it with this. That's perfect. Okay. I want to shape this. So that those will be my seams for that. Now, basically, I have really finished my draft for the front. And the next thing you would do would be to, and I'm going to show you how to do this. I think this is important to show you. Let's use, this of course was, remember, the top of my dart. This is the apex, and then this is the top of the other dart. But you see this line is going to go right through. So here we are. We're gonna divide it. When I say divide it, I mean really make mine. Oh, one other thing before we get into trouble. Make sure you put in your grain lines. You know your grain line is parallel to the center front line. So we have a grain line, because they're gonna have the grain line here. And the grain line for the other panel is going to be parallel as well. It's important to put this in because it takes a little different angle. So we know then there we have our grain lines. And another grain line. And now, meanwhile, we haven't done any seam allowances because we can't. Not yet, because all this in through here is we're gonna have to add seam allowance to that. Okay, let's do this other side over here. Here's my black. Here it is. Let's divide it. Now remember, I'm going to be cutting right on where my dart line was. See? Because we don't need this anymore. Just like we don't need this part anymore. Cut. Some of you, incidentally, will not even be cutting in this way. You might just go straight down the middle of it, and then you'll have a straight garment that doesn't have a shape in it. So you can do whatever you want to do. If you want a fitted garment, or if you want a garment that's just, it's sort of like a boxy garment, it's fine. But mine is not going to be as fitted as the original drape was that we did, but for our sloper, that is, for our basic. But it's also going to have a little bit extra room in it. Now, you're going to have to remember, if we're going to cut this, again, remember we changed this line. You can put this here so you'll know this is a new line. This here is our new line. And also the line that we added the buttonhole extension. All this down here. So here we go. We're going to cut this. Trying to let you see when I'm cutting it. Remember that's the again, this can be any shape that you want it to be on the armhole, depending upon what the design that you want to do. All right, so this